So what's changed on LOD? So there's nothing I can really show you here because I don't actually have a piece of technology. But actually, one of the things which will be updating this month. So just to clarify, the update to LOD happens tonight. Okay, so the things that I'm going to talk about here are not in LOD today, but they will be tomorrow. Okay, unless something goes wrong with the push to production. Okay, so we've had quite a lot of updated feedback from a couple of our large customers, including people like Microsoft, that they needed some improvements around accessibility, specifically with the use of screen readers, and also to do with some new high contrast type settings that they would like to see in the product. So those things will actually go into production tonight. There will be some additional improvements around this area actually in April as well. So the work's not completely finished in this space, but certainly if you do work in scenarios where you've got people with additional learning needs, maybe use screen readers and the screen readers have not worked particularly well, then what I would say is, next month's going to be a really good month to retest. Okay, and actually see if you're getting a better experience with those types of technologies. And what I would say is, if you're still getting an experience which actually you would like to be a little bit better, please use our feedback site. Let us know, because quite often the technologies in this area are quite diverse. So what we might do to help, product A might not help with product B. And to be honest, we will only know if you can sort of come along and say, we use product X for screen reading, and it's causing these challenges. And if you let us know, then we'll do what we can to sort of resolve those types of issues. The other thing which we've introduced, and we've had a few customers that have actually requested this over the years, and even when I was at the company that I used to work for, when we used to use, or still do, they still do use Skillable's platform, was the need for a bigger text box to take responses from users. So we're going to introduce a new multi-line text box. Okay, so the @lab tokens that people put in the instructions, okay, there'll be a new @lab instruction which will be @lab.sa text box. Okay, and then as always, it has a variable name. And this will allow you to enter up to 5,000 characters. Okay, so that's what the user can actually enter into this box. What you can also do is you can control what the height of this box is going to be based on the number of lines. So you can sort of signify this is a bigger box just by showing that the box looks quite a bit taller. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay. Other features that we've actually got, okay, are actually around a new feature that we've got called Lab Series Archiving. Okay, so some of you might have seen that we have a feature which actually allows you to disable a lab series. Okay, when you disable a lab series, what that also means is once that lab series is disabled, I apologize for my little puppy. Okay. Barking in the background there. What she's actually going to go and do now, because the postman's arrived, is go, let me just pull all of the post out the letterbox and just spread it over the floor. She doesn't rip it up or anything. She just spreads it around on the floor. Okay, apologize for that. Okay, so with the labs, so on the moment we have an option where you can disable a lab series. Okay, and if you disable a lab series, you can set a date in the future. Okay, when you set that date, from that point onwards, any lab profiles that are part of that lab series are effectively disabled. Okay, so what that means is you cannot assign any new assignments. Okay, but it also means, let's say for example someone actually got access to that lab a week before the disablement date. Okay, they would normally get 6 months post-course access. They would lose access on the disablement date, so they wouldn't get the 6 months post-course access. Okay, so this new lab series archiving effectively disables the ability for the lab to be assigned, okay, but it still allows anybody that's got the lab assigned to it and any duration left on their lab access to continue. Okay, so effectively they still get that post event access effectively. The last thing, which is really minor, is you will actually see if you use the especially if you use the vSphere environment. Morning, Rodrigo. You will actually see it's just been rebranded to ESX. So if you think about the fabric where you might select Hyper-V or Docker or whatever you might pick, it used to say vSphere. Okay, so that's now going to say ESX. Okay, so there's a bit of just rebranding. So no functional changes. It's just a presentation change. Okay, so I can show you what those changes look like if I go and find my hopefully my UAT system, because obviously these are not in production at the moment. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we can look at here. So obviously first and foremost on a lab profile, okay, if I go and hit the edit instructions, okay, I can type in the @lab, okay, and when I put the dot, as always, you get the little IntelliSense come up, and you'll see there is now a new SA text box. Pretty simple. Okay, so you could put the SA text box in and you can give the variable a name. So I'm just going to go, you know, big box. Okay, and I can then specify a height as a numerical value. So effectively, I'm going to put in here, you know, 50 lines, for example. So you can see it's just made that box really large on the right hand side. Okay, so we'll make that a bit smaller. And actually, just for the purpose of demonstration, I'm just going to change that variable. I was just doing some testing earlier on, make sure it's working in UAT. So I was going to have a different variable. Actually, exactly the same as always. I can now do @lab.variable. Okay, and I can actually just reuse that data the same way as I would do with a regular text box. Okay, and as you'd expect, you know, I can now type in and contain 5,000 characters, a whole load of random stuff in. Okay, so pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and effectively when I jump outside the box, effectively it saves it into the variable, and then obviously that can be consumed the same way as you might use a variable with the existing system. So it's exactly the same as the regular text box in terms of how you might use it, how you might consume it. The only difference is it allows a much larger string of characters, and you can customize actually the size in terms of the number of lines the box has got. You will notice, just because of what it is, there is actually a grab handle here. So as a user, they can then override that box size if they want. But by default, it opens to the full width of the instruction panel. Okay, and based on the number of lines that you specify in that list. So hopefully pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But I know there's been a few customers that have actually wanted the ability for people to sort of enter bigger, you know, answers into the platform. So the next part was the lab series archiving. Okay, so if I just go across, oh, actually, while I'm here, actually, I'll just show you obviously the virtualization platform change. So basically, it just doesn't say vSphere anymore; it just says ESX. That's it. Pretty simple. Okay, so actually, just that's it. So it's just a visualization change. So of course, obviously, all of your existing labs that if they use vSphere, that when you look at the overview page, just be aware that will now say ESX. Okay, functionally, no change, nothing at all. Okay. On the lab series archiving, if I go across to the lab series, okay, and edit the lab series, you will see that we've now got this automatically archive box. Okay, so effectively, if I tick that, I can then specify a date and a time when I'd like to archive this lab series. So effectively what that means on the 30th of April, okay, at 10:20, you will not be able to allocate that lab series to any users. Okay. However, any users that have already got it allocated, so in this case, if someone actually gets this lab series allocated to them by launching a lab at, you know, the 30th of April, 10:19 in the morning, they would still be able to run that, and they would still get their post-course activity and access to it, whatever that duration is and how you configure it. Unlike disable, okay, which effectively on the surface seems to do the same thing, okay. However, the thing with the disable, okay, is post-course access is also removed at that point, okay. So just hopefully that explains the sort of differences between those two options.